Welcome aboard. You're listening to Flight Plan Quick Consult, your go-to podcast for veterinary insights that are fast, focused, and designed to elevate your practice. I'm your host, Brenda Medina from Encore Veterinary Consulting. Whether you're between appointments or heading into a strategy session, we've got takeoff ready tips, tools, and takeaways to keep your team soaring. So buckle up and let's chart today's course to exploring why are we so busy and still so tired? Today's panel includes Michelle Winter, Tiffany Consalvo, and Amy Brauns. Michelle, tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Winter. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Encore Vet Group.
Awesome. Next up is Tiffany Consalvo.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Consalvo. I am the Director of Leadership and Operations at Encore Vet Group.
And last but certainly not least is Amy Brauns.
Hey, I'm Amy Brauns. I am a hospital administrator for Everhart Veterinary Medicine, a three location privately owned practice. Been there for about 28 years and have started really digging deep into these kinds of questions and information sessions. Started as a CSR when I was a tot and have worked pretty much through every role in the practice except for veterinarian for the past 28 years, and now work directly under Dr. Goodman, the owner, in benchmarking and strategic planning for the three locations.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Glad to have you all here today. So I'm going to dive right into the first question for our listeners. So if I were a practice owner, how do I tell if my practice is truly overbooked or just inefficient?
That's a great question. I don't think there's any one way to tell, but I mean, it isn't uncommon to walk into a practice, whether you work there, or you're a client there, or you are a consultant there, or in our case, we visit our practices that, are one of our 55 practices. There's a feeling. I mean, there's a feeling, but you can't go only with feelings in veterinary medicine or really in any business. So, what I've always thought is if I look at benchmarks and the things that we say are maybe the averages or the medians of our profession, I'd always want my practice to be on the higher end of that. I want to be contributing to the averages from the higher side of things. And so I would say benchmarking your practice in certain areas might be a really good way to know if you're just spinning and spinning and spinning. But another opportunity is probably on things like client retention. We can all get really fast at what we do, but if we're just churning clients, you're really not making the impact you hope to make. We need to hold our clients and take really good care of them so they want to come back. So getting the right sort of KPIs for success measures and then benchmarking your practice against averages, I think are two really good ways to know.
What would be your number one efficiency book KPI, Michelle?
For the doctor or the team or?
For like the workflow, for the outpatient workflow, the exams.
It's probably going to be patient seen based on number of people you have serving. I mean, it's not that more is better, but if the demand is there, our job is ultimately to try to meet the demand of our local demand, right? So I think patient seen versus the number of providers you have is probably a really good one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Same question to you, Tiffany. How do we tell the difference between overbooked and inefficiency?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I actually had to sit back and think and not have this automatic response because I was like, I know when I'm working with practices, some of them just feel really, really busy, like Michelle said, of like you walk in and you're just like, man, it's chaotic. And I don't know that they're really overbooked though. And so I think the first tactic I would probably look at is to do an efficiency study, like do a time study, the painful time study that it is, but track in when the appointment is, when the client arrives, like do you have a inefficiency there with your reminder system? And then I would track when does the client get into the room. So is there a inefficiency with getting them into an exam room to be seen? Is there an intake issue? Like how long does it take for somebody to do intake? How long does it take for the doctor to be in the exam room? What's checkout look like? And then actually look for inefficiencies. And I think that's where I would probably start if somebody feels really busy, because I would say, there's probably likely some little tweaks that we can make in the practice to make the system a little bit more efficient. And then I would also think of it from a busy standpoint, kind of borders on that burnout type of feel from a practice perspective. So then when I was thinking about this question, I also looked at it when team members don't have control over any of the outcomes of their practice. Maybe they don't have control over their way things are scheduled, or they don't have control over who they're working with or how the workflows are. That can mentally be draining. And so I
Mm.
think that they might feel overbooked even though they're not. So I would also look at some of those things and say, like, do I have a system in place? Does everybody know what they are supposed to be doing when they come to work? And do they see the progress of what they're doing every single day? So do they see the fruits of their labor? Are we sharing that stuff with them? And then I would kind of have a mental checklist of those things and pair that with my efficiency and then decide if I'm actually overbooked and need to be hiring a doctor. Or do I just have some of these little things that need to be tweaked in the practice? The other thing that I think can have a mental load on people is if you have a lot of drama at your hospital, it can feel really, really busy because you're just mentally exhausted by your clients or your team. And so I think I would have that list along with my time study and then marry the two together and figure out where I needed to go as a leader.
Those
So
are
good
great
question.
insights.
Yeah, good question.
Amy, what are your thoughts on this question?
Oh, it's a loaded question. Um, just because, if I was to ask that question to any of my support staff, immediate response is we are understaffed and overbooked right off the
Yes.
bat. Looking at those benchmarks and the KPIs, sorry, my friends, we are not. We're in a good spot right now. Um, there were two really big things that we used to help identify inefficiencies in our team. One was our client experience audit, which was introduced by us to Brenda, or by Brenda to us, I should say, and a phone call audit system. So basically, we are getting down in the weeds with the team and being part of the team and seeing what's going on. The client experience audit sort of backtracks or tags along with what Tiffany said, and we're looking at, we are walking in with the client and we are staying with that client until the time they leave the building. And not only are we looking at time frames, how long was check-in? How long did they wait in the waiting room? How long were they waiting in the exam room before there was conversation started? We were also looking at what kind of questions are being asked? Are they asking appropriate questions? Are they communicating clearly? Are they communicating clearly with the doctor or their coworker that's running appointments with them? And that gave us a really wide view of what was happening every day. Not only did we see inefficiencies with specific people, we found multiple inefficiencies that were hospital wide,
Mm.
which then gave us the opportunity to sit back and say, okay, these are where our inefficiencies are. Let's get the team involved. Let's talk about it and come up with a game plan. And I can tell you, once we got them involved and they began to come up with ideas and things like that, our efficiency took off so much better. The other one, the phone call audit, sort of worked the same way, but we just pick random phone calls for every staff member. We have a very specific form that we fill out. We listen to it, we audit it. We also send the phone call to that team member. They have to listen, they have to fill out their form, and then we go back and meet and we look at the basics. Did we greet ourselves, the client? Did we introduce ourselves? Did we show compassion? Was there extended hold times? And then the
Did
loaded
we ask for the
question.
appointment?
Yes, right. Yeah. Or sometimes we even they don't even ask if they're a client before they start digging into when our next available appointment is. And that's, not cool. So we go through that. And the loaded question at the end is, what is one more thing I could have done to make this call exceptional? And if anybody ever says, no, it was a perfect call, that's a problem. There's always something more we could do. And again, it gets them involved. It's not just us saying this is what we need to do. They're seeing the data, they're seeing it, they're hearing it. And that really helped them see that, yeah, maybe we are having our busy, crazy days, but we do have some inefficiencies that we can really focus on. So that
Excellent.
was a big eye opener for us.
Yeah, that client experience audit, that's so telling whenever I
Mhm.
work with teams and perform that audit. we have SOPs in place, standard operating procedures for so many things in our practice, but I rarely, if ever, find one for the entire client experience. And you've got multiple different teams touching the client and patient along the way, not really aware of what's happening on the other side of their touch point.
Yep.
And getting that continuity flowing can make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tiffany, I'll start with you on this one. What are the first 2 to 3 workflow fixes that create relief without adding staff?
I'm going to say one that's probably everybody's probably going to say AI, is that's the cool thing to say right now. And I do agree. I think that AI scribes in the exam rooms can save tons of time. But one thing that I saw in practice was being prepared for the appointment before it arrives. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that you can do to be prepared for that appointment before it arrives would be the workflow fix that I would suggest. And for example, if it's wellness, so if you're a GP practice and 80% of what comes through your door is a wellness appointment or a check-in with skin, eyes, ears, something like that, we can prepare by getting equipment ready that's for the eyes. We can prepare by getting vaccines ready. And maybe you don't mix cakes and powder, right? You don't mix up your vaccines, but you have them ready and set aside so that you're prepared for the person before they come in the door. And I think that that would be one of the most easiest things that you can do to make yourself so efficient. And take it a step further with the client estimate, right? If we have all of our recommendations from all of our doctors set up ahead of time, and so I know that a 2-year-old dog, I'm going to recommend all of these things. Why not give the client an estimate for those procedures? Hook it into a payment plan option too to make sure that they have the funds ready before they even get to the hospital. Like anything that you can think of to get ahead of whatever's coming in the pipelines, I think is going to be the most efficient process for your practice. The other thing is, I love exam room checkout. And so if you don't have exam room checkout, I think that it just allows the CSR team to check in and greet clients the way that they need to, but not worry about trying to check out in a part of the exam that they were never in. So there's no double check really there. I can remember way back when we had these folded like travel sheets that came in paper form because I'm not old and have been in this for that long. And you scribble down and you get the front desk and you're double checking, and the client's standing there staring at you the whole time you're double checking their invoice to give them this total. And we've come so far. Like, I don't think we need to do that anymore. I think there's such a better, more efficient process to double check. And so I think I want to stick with a couple of those things, being prepared ahead of time, and then, sending out those estimates or treatment plans before the client arrives so that they can be prepared with the funds that they need to move around, or they can be prepared for the medication that they need.
Thank you, Tiffany. Amy, what are your top 2 things you would do without adding a staff
Well,
member?
Tiffany stole my answers. So, but some of the
I
things
didn't take AI on purpose because I knew that would be hard.
AI actually for us has been a little bit of a hindrance just because we have such a big age gap in some of our veterinarians, and the older ones are just not, it's making things worse. But to sort of piggyback on you, one of the things that we noticed that we helped to improve with the efficiency was with the estimates. We were also having issues where every tech was putting different things in for each estimate. For one wellness could have 3 different estimates. So we were able to make sort of wellness packages. So we have like geriatric and kitten and all these different varieties of packages that they can just preload into an estimate or right into the patient visit list. And as they talk with the owner, they can decline, accept, and then goes over into their invoicing. So that helped streamline a lot. There was no second guessing or fumbling around. What do I need to add? What lab work are they due for? And that helped making those pre-estimates and the financial conversations a lot easier on the team. The other one that we did was we noticed we used Pulse, and there is a lot of different templates for wellness exams. And running 3 locations, one of which is fear-free, which there's a whole nother level of confusion into processes. We noticed that not only between the 3 practices, but within the doctors at the same location, everyone was using different exam templates. And some required a whole lot of typing in data. Some were just little bubbles you had to fill in. And that was confusing the heck of the technicians. They didn't know where to put data. They didn't know where to enter vaccines. And that was really slowing things down. So just going into the very basics and looking at things that you think are, oh yeah, they know how to do that. No, every once in a while, we got to go back to the very beginning. Are we using the same medical template? Was number one, and huge, huge difference in efficiency with that. So,
Thanks, Amy.
mhm.
What are your thoughts, Michelle?
Well, I share all of those thoughts. The good news is I've got a couple more that I wrote down just in case they hadn't been addressed. And so I always look at how people spend their time. And we know as leaders, doctors spending their time doing doctor things is really, really important because ultimately they guide, they're there to diagnose and prescribe and initiate treatment and do surgery. Nobody else can do that. They have to do that part. So if their time is not being used wisely or they're inefficient, I always think it's important to start with them. And I do believe the biggest opportunity in this moment is the AI note taking opportunities. Not every doctor is going to adopt that, but many, many will. And it also, kind of helps us with some other work-life balance things, taking home, stacks of charts if they're still papered, or even if it's notes entry that they're doing in the car on the way home, like all that stuff that's the road to burnout. So I think that's really important from a doctor standpoint. From a team standpoint, I like to look at, the phones ring off the hook in our practices. And CSRs spend a lot of time answering the phones, which that's never going to change. We need them to answer the phones. That's often the gateway to care. And when you are really purposeful about what you kind of remove from potential phone calls, and I'll give you some examples, it can really help bring down the volume of phone calls without bringing down the volume of visits. And here's what I mean. Forward booking. You've got the client in front of you at the time of a visit. You're going to talk about your recommendations for next care, secure it and schedule it at that time. Because if you don't, it's an additional phone call coming in later. Somebody's got to go pull a chart and go look it up. What did the doctor say? Oh, we need to get you scheduled. Just do it while they're there. That's one less phone call later. The second one is going to be really being purposeful about auto shipping long-term medications and preventives. We know what the refills are for those. Put it in your online pharmacy, auto ship it if you can get the client to agree. Many of them do. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 less phone calls in the year per client. And then the other side of the issue is probably just on like what your phone can do for you, meaning designing a phone tree that can put people where they need to go. Leave a message for a script refill. We don't always have to take that call in the moment. The client can know that we're going to address that and we're going to get them what they need, but it doesn't have to be a live agent on every single phone. So, your CSR's time, it is spent doing a lot of different things. And I think if we can streamline some of the phone volume without dampening visit volume, that's obviously the goal. We've got CSRs focused on client care at the front desk, greeting, talking about past due things that they should be getting during the visit and things like that.
Wow, some amazing insight from our panelists today on efficiency. Thanks for flying with us on Flight Plan Quick Consults. If today's insights helped you climb to new heights, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your crew. Until next time, keep your mission clear, your team aligned, and your practice soaring.